A little disclaimer before we get rolling here. You're about to hear some ads. They are all from local entities that want to support the baseball community. A lot of these guys have deep connections. We're players themselves, so if you see having a need for any one of these services, please go patronize these guys. Thank you. I'm extremely excited to announce that this episode is being brought to you by DC Kitchens. In the greater Louisville area, phone number 502-296-7574. That's right, this is Don Cunningham himself, the man that raised the man. This is Wes's dad. This is a master craftsman. This guy has been at it for 43 plus years, working on kitchens, working on his craft. If you think back to the golden rule of spending 10,000 hours on something to become a master, try more like 100,000 hours for Don. And not for nothing, he's a cool guy. He's got a cool vibe. Go see him. He will get your kitchen right. Thanks, Don. We are also brought to you by Rude Boards, a custom skateboard company located in Cincinnati, Ohio, made by none other than the legend himself, Wes Cunningham. They're hand-pressed, hand-shaped, hand-painted, hand-stained. He's built quite the following on Instagram. This is not some rinky-dink little thing. He has over 13,000 followers. Go find him on Instagram at rude_boards, or you can contact him via email wscunningham1@gmail. Talk about a guy living his life authentically. It's Wes. Go get a Rude Board. We are also brought to you by Chad Marshick and Body Symmetry, located at 2201 West White Oaks Drive, 217-793-9972, bodysymmetry.com. Go see Chad Marshick, the owner, for all your personal training needs. He was the trainer to Ryan O'Malley, Jason and Justin Knadler, Eric Jokic. He can train any population. He's one of my favorite people in the world. We really appreciate you, Body Symmetry. Go see Chad and his team of trainers. It brings me great pleasure to announce that we are now brought to you by Iron Palm Coffee, located in the parking lot at Soccer World, Lawrence and Durkin, right off Veterans Parkway. This is a long time coming. This is a good friend of mine, a very inspirational friend of mine. He's had this vision for years, finally coming to fruition. He fell in love with the coffee business many years ago because it connects people. It brings people together. Personally, I am forever in debt to this guy and his story. It's inspirational. He's been through a ton. I think he's a warrior and a champion of a person. So go see Iron Palm Coffee in the parking lot at Soccer World. Put some iron in your blood. We appreciate you, Iron Palm Coffee. We are also brought to you by Sitco Chiropractic, located at 205 North Grand Avenue, 217-525-2035, sitcochiropractic.com. I'm talking Dr. Steve, Dr. Casey, Dr. Kyle. These are some chiropractic son of guns. Love the Sitco family. Older brother Tyler was a heck of a baseball player at SHG and SCI. Go see them for all your chiro needs, lifestyle choices, nutritional counseling. They do it all. Great, great family, great guys. Thanks, Sitkos. We are also brought to you by Josh Badman of Radon Fighters. He can be reached at 217-823-9536. This is a great guy. He's my fellow firefighter. Use post-game spread as a code to save $25 on a radon inspection. If you're buying a home or just want peace of mind for radon in your house, please give Josh a call. He was a standout player at Morrisonville back in the day and then played at SCI for Coach Tor in the early 2000s. Go see Radon Fighters. We are also brought to you by Cardinal Cleaning. They can be reached at cardinalcleaningonline.com and 217-679-6567. The owner-operator, Adam Springer, local baseball dude, family friend, stand out at Chatham Glenwood in the mid-90s. Also had a stellar career at Rend Lake and Kentucky Wesleyan. Cardinal Cleaning can take care of any cleaning needs you have. Home, business, restaurant, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever you need, they can take care of you. Get a hold of Cardinal Cleaning. They'll do the rest. Hey, buddy.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. This is going to be our part 2 here, so super excited about that. It's been going amazing. We kind of left it off right after his freshman year, and kind of how that all went for you, how it unfolded. I loved how we left it. Summer ball. So getting into summer ball, and this is like a big thing that guys do, and Division One if you're trying to make it, if you're trying to progress your career. But from what I think I know, you didn't play in any of these like prospect collegiate leagues until a little bit later. Is that accurate?
That is correct. There was a small league, and saying league is being very generous with it. In Louisville, I want to say it was just called like Derby City or something like that. And it was very informal. A lot of college players who just kind of wanted to keep your skills somewhat sharp, but
Yeah.
didn't want the,
Grind of a real.
rigid.
Yeah.
Exactly. I could work a job, I could have some fun summertime, and I could still play some ball.
Yeah.
And I did Derby City. I want to say both my first 2 summers. And it was kind of this. I remember after the first year, it actually kind of reinvigorated me. I kind of came into a pretty informal league as like, hey, I'm a D1 guy.
Yeah.
Nobody needs to know that I was just the bullpen catcher here, but I come in, and I'm playing with guys who are like straight out of high school, or were trying out for their team the next year, things like that. So like I kind of come in thinking, it kind of builds my confidence back up, and I play well in the few games we play. I don't think anybody anywhere was keeping statistics.
Yeah.
In fact, I know some guys who from the Louisville area would, when they found themselves back in town, they would have a team that they would try to suit up for. It was very informal. You got out of it what you wanted. And I enjoyed it. It gave me a break from the grind of college ball.
Job. It's a full-time job.
100%. And it kind of gave me that break.
Yeah.
But it also, like I said, it allowed me to stay in the game. It allowed me to, get some swings, get some innings in. And it was overall a good experience. I don't think it really, I don't think it impacted me one way or the other, but
right.
It was a good experience.
Let me ask you, where was your head at? Where was your confidence at after that kind of freshman year? I'm like, where you thought your place was going to be on this team and this program?
So I don't think I had any idea where I was going to be the next year.
Mm-hmm.
I think I kind of had this naive view of like, well, I'll be a sophomore, so naturally sophomores play more than freshmen.
Yeah.
Kind of just this, the longer you're there, you'll obviously move up, just kind of this naive view of things. But at the same time, like my closest friends on the team at the time weren't really getting playing time either.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle got some, but he was by no means, starting every game. He was playing more than I was. Baldini had a good start of the year, but towards the end of the year wasn't playing much from injuries and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then some of the other guys in my class redshirted that first year.
Right.
So I wasn't disheartened by any means. I was still very, I would say, optimistic. I just kind of had this idea that like, all right, first year's under my belt. Let's see what next year brings.
Yeah. Is that, I kind of think of you in a ways as kind of an optimist. Is that something that is in you? Was that cultivated? Is that in a Cunningham household thing? Or
I think it's definitely a Cunningham trait, but it's something that I think I had to work at more than, or at least it seemed like it came more naturally to my brother and parents, which that could just be me not understanding that they had to do the same amount of work. But I definitely felt like I had to work at it, but it was something it was definitely intentional. To try to, get that optimistic mentality. I mean, because a lot of, like, I keep coming back to the kind of subculture that I gravitated to, the punk rock, the culture itself was very much a positive family place, where you felt you were accepted no matter what.
Yeah.
But a lot of like the themes of, the bands, the music, the lyrics are a lot more about like, discontent and the, crappy way of the world at that point. And so like, it was definitely something that I had to intentionally kind of force myself to have that optimistic mentality. But it once I figured it out, it came pretty naturally.
I love it. Yeah. And you had a really interesting sophomore year from my perspective. This would have been my last year at Murray State. And, you ended up being all OVC as a
Mm-hmm.
designated hitter, hit 380, but not allowed 380. There was a lot of, and you yourself said it during the run with the Racers podcast. You did a lot of things to get on base, whether it was beating it into the ground or, bunting or getting it through. I mean, you were obviously very fast. You were a 6'5", 60 guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I thought you were honestly the best that I ever saw in all my time in baseball on getting out of the box when you swung. It felt like when your swing was done, it seemed like you were 5 steps out of the box, and like you were beating out stuff. If you made the shortstop move 2 feet to the left, you were beating it out, and that's saying a lot in Division I baseball. Those should not be hits in any way.
I agree, and it became kind of an inside joke among the team. My number was 38, and people started calling it the 38 special. When I would get my infield singles, or when
Yeah.
I would,
Yeah.
because whether it was, at first it kind of started as things that I would force into hits. I would, as you said, kind of cultivate these hits out of not squaring the ball up or whatever. But as the season progressed and as the scouting reports started to catch up, some of those hits came because the infielders would rush themselves because in their head
Yeah.
it's like, oh, this guy's going to beat it out,
Yeah.
so I've got to and so it kind of worked in my favor. But a lot of that early sophomore year, um, it was doing anything I could to get on base so that I could have the time I needed to figure out my swing.
Yeah, I love that.
Um,
And every once in a while, you would charge one. So it would be like, there'd be bloops and hammered into the ground, but then every once in a while, you would backspin one. And you'd be like, whoa.
yeah,
Okay, so
it,
there's something there. He just needs to be able to do it consistently.
exactly. And it was a lot of kind of trial and error. And it was like, all right, I need to do whatever I can to stay in the lineup, because
Yeah,
that's the only way I'm going to get comfortable in the box. That's the only
right.
way I'm going to get comfortable with my swing and figuring out how to make my weird swing work.
Yeah,
Because I mean, my swing was far from my stance. It was
unconventional.
very unconventional.
Yeah,
And it was just kind of this trial and error thing that I'm fortunate that I had the other tools to kind of allow myself to stay in the
yeah.
lineup.
Hey,
And
when you're talking trial and error, interesting thing during the run with the Racers, you talked about working with a couple of teammates on your swing. Would that have been like KT?
mhm,
Is
yep,
that who you were in the lab essentially figuring it
yeah.
out with?
So yeah, KT and I, we would, he was Coach Max. We all joke.
Son.
He was Coach Max's son. He was the golden boy. Um, and so I remember he would get, access to places and things where others might not. If I would have gone and said, "Hey, can I have the keys to the batting cage and some balls?" On this random off time, they might have been like, "Eh," but KT could get it whenever. And you know, I was doing a lot of. I kind of carried over a lot of that extracurricular work that I had started putting in my freshman year into
Yeah,
sophomore year, and KT was with me a lot of that. I mean, we would
yeah,
go to get extra workouts in at the rec center
yeah,
on campus, and we would go get extra, hacks in. Because I mean, Kyle, like you, and like I said, To, I mean, you guys are those guys who understand the game and uh, can look at somebody and kind of help point out
yeah.
what's not working right and what's not.
Sure.
I mean, I was fortunate enough, but you three, and then one other person comes to mind, Jason Laws. I mean, I was fortunate enough to play with you guys who understood the game in a way that I just fundamentally didn't.
Yeah,
And thankfully, Kyle and I had developed such a great friendship that
yeah.
we were able to roll it over into some extra practice as well.
He had a beautiful swing too, if I remember right.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, just
he
that
was
lovely lefty, smooth. Yeah,
all around, man. He was a ball player. I
he
mean, he
was.
was he was a top prospect out of high school. I mean,
Yeah, big time. Yeah,
yeah, he has he had a lot of prospects. He battled some injury
yeah,
late in his Murray State career, unfortunately. But um, yeah, I was just kind of doing anything I could to figure out how to stop the negative sides of my swing and approach, and forced. I reached a point where instead of trying to fix things and make my swing look like everyone else's, I tried to figure out, all right, how do I minimize the mistakes in my swing and make my swing work?
Oh, that is perfect,
Um,
dude. I love
and
that.
that's kind of what I did. And, that resulted in my really, as you said, unconventional stance and swing. I mean, I was
Oh,
spread out of almost the entire,
yeah.
my, my legs were about as the full width of the batter's box
Yeah.
apart.
Here we go. Dude, I have the perfect clip to play right now. It's
Yeah.
absolutely perfect. This is Zach Noonan Shrubs himself. What
Oh
what
yeah.
what works for Wes?
I think that he figured out what worked best for him and stopped listening to the noise. Wes is the most unathletic, athletic guy you'll ever meet, especially on a baseball
It's a great way to
field.
put that. Yeah.
He didn't look like he knew how to swing, didn't look like he knew how to throw, didn't look like he knew how to run, but he could throw harder than you, he ran faster than you, he hit the ball further than you. But he did it all in Wes's way. And I think it finally got to the point where he matured enough in accepting who he was that he stopped listening to the outside noise and was like, I'm just going to be Wes. And by that time, it was around his junior year, and it truthfully showed, especially numbers-wise on the field, what he was actually capable of.
That's a cool clip by Nooney there.
That is, man. That's well said. And he's one of the ones that I've been fortunate enough to keep in touch with at those alumni golf outings. He comes every year because he still lives right around Murray. But I mean, he nailed it.
Yeah.
I was not the conventional ball player, and I think a lot of that stems from the lack of hands-on coaching early on, but also like we talked about, I wasn't watching it all the time. I wasn't emulating what other people were doing. I was just kind of going out there and somehow making it work. And sophomore year, that's what it was all about.
I've got a perfect other clip. Then you're just leading me into these clips here, Wes.
Perfect.
This is going to be McFarland, Seth McFarland, Meaty. He's our Meaty boy. Wes's baseball knowledge. It's cool.
And I also think whenever he was at the plate in his early success, I think that his baseball knowledge wasn't as high as a lot of the other batters, so he didn't really get in his head that much. He just kind of reacted. He just kind of see ball, hit ball, and he kind of just dumbed it down for himself to where he wasn't overthinking. He wasn't thinking about counts. He wasn't looking at, the pitcher's tendencies. I think he just got up there and had fun.
Dude.
And I so agree with this. Your like kind of unconventionalness, Wesness played perfectly for you. Like it played in your favor in a positive way, right?
Yeah, and I like how he kind of, tiptoed around that because he didn't want to come off like insulting, but he 100%. Like I was getting up there, and I wasn't in my head as
No.
It fast forward senior year. I remember when I had scouts starting to come look at me. I had a scout who asked about my grades, and he knew that I was an academic All-American.
Yeah.
And he said that was a negative point for him.
Really?
Yeah. He said, in so many words, he said, he looks for the athletes that aren't necessarily good students because he doesn't want overthinkers. He doesn't want people who are going to overanalyze things.
Oh, that's interesting.
And now,
but you are a deep thinker too on the flip side.
So that's the thing. So
right?
It's kind of that the two sides of the personality.
Duality of man.
Yeah, I'm overanalyzing things on the intellectual and academic side, and in my personal life, but on the field, it was very much just like McFarland said. It was, all right, I hope you throw me a fastball here because that's what I want to hit right now.
That's so perfect, dude. Man, that's perfect. And I love that you can take this in stride too, because there are some funny parts to this. And like, you were not a conventional baseball guy, and like
far from it.
We're going to get into your defensive stuff, but some of that stuff was pretty funny. Like this was the year that they kind of moved you to the outfield or tried you in the outfield some. Can we talk about that?
Yeah. So I think, like we talked last time, I think Coach Mack after freshman year realized that I was not going to be the catcher that he was looking for. Yeah. Which was good for him because it allowed him to look to recruit a catcher.
Yeah. Right.
I think that was the year. Did we get Pettit that year? as Miller's backup. Was
That
that?
sounds right. Yeah, sounds right.
So he could kind of stop thinking about me as the catcher, and then with my speed, the next obvious thing is let's throw him in the outfield. But this is
I've got some
D1.
thoughts.
This isn't Little League where you put old Jimmy in right field because his mom wants him to play and he doesn't give a shit. Like, this is D1 ball.
Yeah.
Outfielders, a good outfielder can save several runs every few games.
Yep.
And so I think the natural inclination was, all right, let's put him in the outfield. He's fast. He can run down balls.
He's got a good arm. Yeah, he'll figure it out.
Yeah. And then they were like, but we've got good outfielders. We don't need a void in our outfield.
Can I say a few things here?
Please do.
About what I remember. So I think we would have had coach, was it Luke Howard was our sophomore?
Yeah.
Your sophomore year? He was only there for a year, right?
Yep.
He was kind of in charge of the outfielder group, right?
Yeah.
And I remember them first throwing you out there, and I guess I was around him or something. He hit you one, and as soon as you take off after the ball, your glove hand goes up. And you run after the ball with your glove hand up the whole way. So you're covering half the outfield with your glove hand in the air. And he's like, what the hell is that boy doing?
I feel like that's something you see in, Sandlot. Just put your arm up with the glove and he hits the ball right into the glove.
I was like, I've never seen that before. Outfield didn't work out, but you did eventually, and we'll get to it, come to find a kind of a home at first base, and things got better for you there. And there's actually a couple cool stories and clips about a really cool play you had your senior year.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get to that, but
and that's kind of foreshadowing a little bit is, Coach Mack had the forethought junior year of all right, where do we find a place for him? Because a permanent DH, there shouldn't be a permanent DH on a D1 team.
Right. Yeah. So, yep. Eventually, found a home at first base. We'll get there. One thing I kind of want to highlight before we kind of move off your sophomore year is, man, you were such a weight room warrior, dude. You got after it in there. You were one of the guys that took it serious. We were kind of laughing on the opposite side of that is Decal, who, despite his greatness in baseball, wasn't a big fan of the weight room, was the king of kind of hiding on a leg press or a lat pull down and not really doing a whole lot. But not you. I think you really saw this as an opportunity to get better, to get stronger, to get faster, to improve. I've got a couple weight room clips here about some guys talking about you in that. So can I just rip through a couple of them?
Let's hear them.
Skirka, weight room click. And I got to say this. Every time I hear his name, and am I saying it right, Skirka?
Mm-hmm.
I think back to is there an Ace Ventura movie where they're Chicago or something like that? I cannot hear his name without thinking that. So I think when I say his name, I say Skirka. Anyway, that's my randomness. All right, here we go. Skirka weight room clip. Here we go. Yep.
Yeah, it was funny. I used to lift with the guys. It was just a good time. I was childless at that time. It was just me and my wife in Murray, so I had some extra time. And when we went to the weight room in the evenings, it was a good time for me to jump in there with the guys. And I just remember, they'd get done, team break, leave, and Wes would still do at least 2 or 3 more sets of power cleans and deadlift. And I was like, holy cow. And that was he was still warming up. Guys were maxing out and burning out for the end of the day and going on out in the locker room and taking it to the house. And here was Wes just still getting after it. And that was awesome to see. I think he set an example for some younger guys that year. But he showed, especially even in season, to maintain that strength and the drive, to not be happy. And I think he was getting hungrier with his success. So it was pretty neat to see.
Cool to hear when your coaches talk about you like that, right? To recognize something like that.
It really is, man. And because, at the time, there's 2 kinds of people that do that kind of stuff. There's the people who do it just to be seen by the coaches. And then there's, I didn't even think twice about whether or not that, it was getting noticed. But it's reaffirming to hear that it was getting noticed. I appreciate that. And Skirka's Skirk is a good dude.
Yeah, absolutely. And shout out to that guy. He has done so he eventually came back. You know, he was an assistant, left, went somewhere else for a couple of years, came back, and is now the head coach, and is doing phenomenal there. Like, has really, pumped that program up. And he's a young guy, and it seems like the ball players love him there. You guys loved him. I've always heard positive things about him. So
He's done so much for the program, both for the current players, for the alumni, getting the alumni back involved. Yeah. He's done, like we were talking earlier, the facilities. I mean, he won't stop, and I think there's great things ahead for him.
I love that. Here we go. We got this is our final Zach Noonan, Trubs himself clip. This was Wes was a weight room freak.
Wes was a freak. I don't think it really mattered how he was feeling, whether it was up, down, depressed, happy, hungover, sad, feeling great, whatever it may be. But when it came to the weight room, dude, no one could show up Wes. That was one thing that he prided himself in. I think that goes back to like his punk rock days of, he wants to be intimidating. So when you look at him, you want to have that fear factor, and dude, he owned that.
Noonie himself. And I've got, before we kind of get off your sophomore year here, I've got I remember this was my last year with you, and you were known to your poor helmet, if you had a strikeout or if you got out or something like that. This man would beat up his helmet a little bit. And here we go. This one is called Wes. All right, this is Seth MacFarlane Meaty. This is Wes Destruction. Here we go. Here we go.
This is so bad. Whenever Wes struck out, I just love the destruction that was about to happen in the dugout.
So I remember that his sophomore year. Yeah, he would get after it. Man.
Oh, his helmet. It was so dented up, and the metal door was so dented up. I mean, like, Wes had that little room, like it was like what people pay money to go break stuff in.
Oh man.
Oh, dude, 100%, man.
But you know what? It was all in the name of you really cared. It wasn't like you were out of control. It was like, this guy really cares about doing his best, about winning, and I always, liked that about you. And that, like I said, you would turn that switch. Once it was over, it was over. You would let it go and move on. It wasn't like you sat there in the dugout and were like a dark cloud.
That's and I
appreciate it.
Oh, and I appreciate hearing that, because it took a while to get to that point. But when I said I only let the temper show in baseball, I flew that flag pretty frequently. I remember one in particular in the dugout. I struck out and I punched a hole through the helmet, and I got pissed and I just threw it in the trash can. And I remember Calhoun's goofy ass tiptoed over there because he wasn't pitching that game and dug it out of the trash can. And like, at first I was like, just leave it. And then like after the game, he's walking around with a hole in the helmet, and I'm just laughing my ass off. I'm like, oh my God.
That's what I'm talking about. Like, you can laugh at yourself. Where sometimes, like, myself, sometimes if I probably wouldn't have been able to laugh at that moment, at that time in my life. And that's awesome that you were able to compartmentalize that. Hey, it's okay. Let's laugh about this. That's hilarious. Before we move on to your junior year here, I've got some meaty quotes that we're going to get through. So always fun talking with this guy. Him and I have kept in touch over the years. I've got a lot of love for Big Meaty Boy. Your nickname came up a few times. Some guys know you as Westicles.
Yeah,
that's a nickname that we have. He showed up covered in tattoos and skateboarded to his first practice. We came in as freshmen together. Shows up in a beat to shit S10 truck with skater stickers all over it, blasting music I have never heard of or wanted to hear. He didn't act like he looked. He surprised me on all angles. Hell, he still surprises me. He wore thrift store suit pants, to wear that he wore, band t-shirts, stocking caps, never wore a flat bill, wore a baseball hat. Did Wes really like baseball? A joke, obviously. Had a confidence about him. We kind of laughed about you. Oh, this is another thing about your defense. I hope we can still laugh about this. But I remember that your offhand, your throwing hand would go behind like the basket of the glove and like, help you close it. which is, you know, a unique move, to say the least.
Thankfully, I outgrew that one. But yeah, it was very much this just uncertainty of like, you know, that's teaching a kid like, all right, basket cat. You know, it's
Right.
like, oh man, I know the people listening can't see what I just did in the camera, but I'm mirroring the, you know,
Yeah.
closing my hand around the ball as if you're teaching a child how to field a ground ball.
Yeah. So here's a great clip. This is McFarland on your bat lag. Here we go.
He would get fooled, and his hands, he had the best lag I've ever seen.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he'd be so far fooled out front, and then he would just all of a sudden slap the ball out of the damn park.
Yeah.
Because he could just keep his damn hands back. But like defensively, we were scared shitless.
I love how he threw that in at the end.
Oh, dude, and it's so spot on. And like, I think if it wasn't so obvious, it wouldn't be as easy to laugh about.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yes.
if it was something like I truly like, you know, struggled at and really tried to remedy, you know, and like it was like a sore point for myself. Like it'd be hard to laugh at, but like
Sure.
even at the time, I remember this this one day we were practicing out on the football field, you know, brand new turf football field.
Yep.
And Coach Mack every now and then would throw in some fun during practice, and he'd be like, "All right, we're gonna do you know, ESPN top 10 plays to close out take an infield." And so like he would hit like a, you know, a slow chopper to third base, to bare hand and throw across their body, a diving play for the shortstop. And everybody's just making these, you know, we're on turf, so you're just making these outrageous slides and great plays. And then he comes to me last. This is when I've moved to first base. And he's like, "All right, you ready?" And he hits me a fly ball.
Everyone's cheering for you.
And I catch it, and everybody's like, "Yes, he did it."
That's so on point, because a lot of these guys said that you know, you were getting it pretty bad from your teammates about your defense, but you wore it, that you took it in stride and laughed about it.
You have to, man. Otherwise, you'll drive yourself crazy.
That's the damn truth.
You have to be able to laugh at yourself.
So perfect. All right. Some more meaty. Lightly recruited. Didn't have a ton of history coming in. 100% should have been redshirted his freshman year. He also wanted to be Indiana Jones. We'll get to that, which is awesome. I bet he never thought about pro ball until after his junior year. Drank King Cobras and lifted in the garage after practice. He was so strong, unbelievable. I can't wait to get to that. Seemed like he legged out everything, how strong and how big he was. It was incredible. He could absolutely fly. His hands were so great. Always kept that back, you know, kept his hands loaded. Got extreme barrel lag. So fun to see him play. He thinks you kind of had an aha moment about how capable you truly were with gaining confidence in the weight room, which is kind of cool. This was funny. At parties, Wes would have his iPod in one ear playing beer pong, you know, with everyone else, listening to different music. Yes, that happened?
Oh, 100%.
Oh my god.
Oh yeah, the punk rocker in me can only take the Murray pop country for so long before, and I'm too social to just, you know, sit at home and avoid people. So
That's perfect.
I would go out and, you know, especially during the pre-gaming, I'm like, all right, well, if y'all are gonna listen to John Deere Green or some bullshit, then I'm gonna listen to some good music. And
I love that, dude. All right, we've got two meaty clips here, and then we're gonna move on from meaty. This is just titled "Meaty Thoughts" because it's kind of like all over the place. So. Seth MacFarlane, meaty thoughts.
The kid was a brain at school. He was super smart, loved history, you know, and that kind of carried over. To his baseball. He lived in the weight room. He got as many extra at bats as he could. I mean, I think that he would, if he got short in a swing because we had ground ball BP. I think he kind of just said, you know what, I'm gonna take my lick. I'm gonna run to the foul ball. I'm gonna drop a tater because that's what I do in the game, and that's what I'm going to practice.
Style, yeah.
That's perfect. We'll get to ground ball BP. We're going to have a good laugh about that one. And then lastly, MacFarlane, passionate about everything he did. Wes.
And Wes was just passionate about everything he did,
Okay.
and that's something that a lot of people don't have. And I also feel like, you know, he was passionate about his family, about his friends, about, you know, he wanted to become Indiana Jones, and he loved history. And then when it came to baseball, he he was passionate about hitting the ball as far and as hard as possible. I think that's all he really cared about. And I think that's, and even if you go play golf with him today, only thing he cares about is like, look how far I hit that ball.
Oh, Meaty, what a character!
Oh yeah, man, and he makes it back for the golf outing quite a bit. He's a fun one to reconnect with, man. But he's not wrong, that passion I think is something I've always kind of prided myself on.
Love that. And so now, man, wait, what did you do after your sophomore year? So you get named All OVC, getting some recognition here. Obviously, I mean, you're already a confident guy, but gaining some more confidence, getting some accolades here. Do you play that same league again?
I did. I had already kind of I needed to work that summer, and I still think it was the level of success I think at this point that I was comfortable with kind of anticipating. I was like, oh, I had a good year. I didn't blow anyone out of the water with insane numbers, breaking records and stuff, but I had a good year. I was named like you said, first team All OVC. So like, but I also wasn't really thinking about what future there was in baseball. It was just, all right, I had another good year. I'm going to do the same thing I did last year.
You hadn't taken this huge monumental step in production either yet. And I'm sure that was when like, okay, things are different now.
Oh yeah. And, I had some fun things already planned that summer. I think, so that would have been the summer my brother and I went to England and Ireland for a couple weeks, and so I really had to bust my butt working back home to be able to afford that. And, so like, it was kind of this intermediary period where, all right, I'm feeling more like myself as, because I'm demonstrating some success and I'm doing well. But it hasn't dawned on me what future potential could be there. So it's kind of this happy place in the middle. And so it was kind of more of the same as the year before. Just kind of took it easy, played some ball. I do think that year, I played on a couple like travel teams is a bad word for it, but it's kind of like this young adults, some college players and stuff. But we'd play some out of town tournaments, and I did that like here and there when I could make it work. Yeah.
So we haven't. This is a big part of your story. I'm remiss that we haven't talked about it yet, but I mean, at this point, I mean, I'm sure you've probably chosen a major academically and are pretty deep in that. Did you come into Murray knowing what you wanted to do pathwise with that, or?
No, absolutely not.
I'd love to hear how that happened for you.
That's kind of another if you would have told me moment, right? Like if I could go back, and tell my high school, history teachers that, hey, I'm going to eventually be a professional historian, they'd be like, yeah, you mean the guy who slept in class every day? And I was fortunate enough that I was always smart, but I was that kind of irresponsible smart where I could get away with not paying attention and still get good grades. In high school and stuff. And so I got good grades all through high school, but I didn't really apply myself. Nothing really clicked. Nothing really made me like
excited about academics.
Yeah, exactly. And then I got to Murray, and I don't think I've ever told anyone this, but your former roommate, Mr. Lucas Allen, who would eventually be my roommate, his fifth or sixth year.
Was it the 7th year or his 8th year?
God, who knows? He lived in our attic. But he was already a declared history major.
Correct. Yeah.
And I was undecided. The first year of college, you can get by on just doing the
prereqs, or like
the prereqs,
your basics
that apply to everything while
General
you figure
studies,
out your major. And he gave me a book or two on that he really liked. It was historical fiction, so it was based in fact, but it wasn't an actual nonfiction book. And I was like, oh shit, like I loved it. I read it on the bus.
Really?
And I absolutely loved it. It was about, and I still remember it. I still consider it one of my favorite books. It was about the Spartan 300 who stood at the Thermopylae Pass. They made that movie 300 about the same story.
Mhm.
But it was a book called Gates of Fire by Stephen Pressfield.
Oh
And
yeah, I know Stephen Pressfield.
yeah, great historical fiction author.
Yeah.
A lot of ancient stuff, but he also dabbles in like World War II historical fiction, things like
Yeah.
that. And I read that and I was like, see, it got me going, you know, like I recognized that it was fiction, but I was still like, I had this kind of aha moment that I'm in college. I can choose what I want to learn. I can take classes that I want to learn about.
Yeah.
I was like, this is cool. So, and you know, you've heard it mentioned a couple times, the Indiana Jones thing.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up loving Indiana Jones. I didn't realize, and keep in mind, I'm talking about this fictional archaeologist while I'm in my office surrounded by professional archaeologists.
Yeah.
But you know, I always loved it. And then I get to Murray, and Murray actually had a very reputable archaeology professor.
Yeah.
And I took an intro class with him, and I really enjoyed his class. I enjoyed the subject matter, and I realized that, like, you know, yeah, I didn't get to beat up as many Nazis as I would have liked, but I could actually like learn
Yeah.
archaeology. I could learn history. So I think it was either end of freshman year or first thing sophomore year, I declared history major, archaeology minor.
Wow.
And it clicked, man. Like
Yeah.
once I realized that, number one, I'm paying to come here, so why throw my money away and not, you
Yeah.
know, give it my best. But also that I can take classes and I can learn things that I enjoy, then it clicked for me. And I prided myself on getting great grades,
Yeah.
on, you know, like you mentioned earlier, I prided myself on my time management,
Yes.
on getting my work done so I could still have fun.
Yeah.
And
You were the best at it, dude. Just the best.
it was, and it's something I still kind of do today. It's prioritizing and not being fortunate enough to not need a lot of sleep.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I remember very clearly that moment in college of just realizing like, hey, like there's something to be said about caring about your education and
Yeah.
you know, caring about you know, learning and furthering yourself academically. I remember there was one time I was talked into skipping a class in college, and I remember it was freshman year. And do you remember Chase Barbier?
Of course I remember him. Yeah. Love that guy.
Yeah, good dude. I've
He
talked to
is.
him a few times since.
Yeah, same. I still keep in touch with him every once in a while.
Yeah, good guy.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure it was him. We were walking to class, and he was like, "Yeah, it's too beautiful. I don't feel like going to class today." And I was like, "No, I hate missing class. I won't do it. I won't do it." I end up giving in to peer pressure. And I think we just sat on a bench or some shit instead of going. I was like, we didn't do anything fun. We didn't do anything epic. We just sat here. I was like, this was a terrible decision. I felt so guilty. Never again.
Interesting.
But yeah, once I figured out that I could, you know, do what I loved and learn what I loved, then, you know, I approached that like I approached everything else.
And there was a professor there that had a big impact on you, right?
Yes,
Can
Dr.
we talk about
Dwayne
that?
Bolin. Yes. Rest in peace. He just passed away a couple years ago.
Saw that.
Coach Mack actually is the one who shared it with me. Dr. Bolin was he's a sports historian, a Kentucky native. He's written a couple books on Adolph Rupp Arena, and he made classes fun. It wasn't the stuffy, you know, stereotypical history professor. He made classes fun. He taught history of Kentucky. He, you know, just an enjoyable guy all around.
Yeah.
He came to my Hall of Fame induction.
Yeah.
I don't even think he was teaching at the time. I think he still lived in Murray and wanted to support me.
Yeah.
He did something once, and I think this is why Coach Mack associates us so closely. Is on campus, he once saw Coach Mack and went out of his way to approach him. And, you know, I want to let you know, like, Wes is one of the first student athletes I've had that makes me believe that somebody can be more of the former than just the latter.
That's powerful.
And I was,
Wow.
I was really, I was like, it's one thing to like, put that in a letter of recommendation or something, but it's another thing to go out of your way and tell your coach that.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah, I mean, Mac had to have loved to hear something like that, right? That's, what a
Oh,
unique
yeah.
thing, because especially myself included, a lot of us essentially majored in baseball. Like, we took easy classes.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us did, at least, just we wanted to play baseball. We were trying to make it in pro ball, and we thought, I don't want academics to get in our way, and that was not you.
Yeah, and and we've all had our own paths to where, and we live in a world now where degrees are kind of expected, but most people don't really use their degrees. I'm fortunately one of the ones that I do. But like, yeah, a lot of the guys we played with, it was, I'm here for baseball and we'll figure out the rest later. And I admire that, like, and we were, a lot of our former teammates are super successful these days. And it's really encouraging to see how much everybody has thrived.
Yeah. I've got a perfect clip right now. It's Coach Skirka. It's called West Bus Trip. So I think it fits right into what we're talking about here. You already know what I'm going to talk about here, or what this is going to be?
No, but I'm excited to hear it.
Okay, cool.
About that. And then I do remember on the bus, I was just kind of walking around one of those longer bus trips that we had and talking to some guys. And I think I asked Wes something, or we were talking about a game, and everybody kind of laughed. And I was like, what? Like, Wes doesn't watch sports. And I was like, oh, didn't know that. And then I looked down, and he's holding a 600-page Chinese history book or something, and I was blown away. I was like, oh, okay. Well, and like you said, I think that, for him to, be able to get away from the game, relax a little bit, get his mind off of it, I could definitely help a guy. But yeah, it was unique, and just kind of talking with him, he said he wanted to be Indiana Jones and whatnot. It just totally. He was unique.
Yeah, not your typical baseball guy by any means. I love that you highlighted that. I could totally see you, having some huge, volume book on the bus.
And occasionally on these road trips, I would, I'm not going to name any names, but I made a little side hustle during my college years of writing papers for people. If I got paid well enough, and some of our teammates were my clients, and I had some from other sports at Murray to make a little cash on the side. And a few years ago, I was teaching History 101 for a community college in Louisville, just as a side gig to make a little extra cash. And I remember thinking, I was like, if only these students knew that, like, I'm a stickler for plagiarism, and like, I was like, if only these students knew that I used to literally write people's papers for my style. I used to get paid to help people cheat. But, what mama don't know won't hurt her.
Right. Well, man, we're at a pretty interesting part in your career here, like a real kind of crossroads here, a real level up that, most people don't get to see. I think everyone in college baseball, I think you hope each year you're going to make steps, right? You're going to get a little better. Some guys want to go play pro ball, but everyone hopes they get better each year. This was a huge leap for you, both in just your overall production. I'm just going to go ahead and read your stats out, and we'll talk about your junior year. But my man went on to hit 411, 134 total bases, 11 home runs, 12 doubles, 3 triples. You guys were 34 and 21 that year, so a pretty strong year. This is when you guys brought in like D Hill and Probst and some guys that could really swing it and could bring some power to the table as well. So can we just talk about what clicked for you this junior year? Do you have any thoughts as to why, this was this huge jump for you?
I think the junior year was just kind of the culmination of the work from sophomore year and the experience that I gained from sophomore year of kind of putting in the extra hours, but also figuring out my swing in a way that I could fully realize my potential. You hear people talking about, like, I was a strong guy who shouldn't only be hitting infield singles, but
So what did you figure out?
so swing wise, mechanically, like I said, my feet were set very far apart because, as McFarland mentioned, I had a habit of, committing too soon, being way out in front. Before I spread my legs out, I would try to take, a step with my swing, and that step would sometimes turn to 2 or 3 steps, and I would, I would just throw my whole rhythm off. So I said, well, screw it. If my legs are already this far apart, if I make my legs so far apart that I can't take a step, then I won't take a step.
Oh,
and so I spread my legs out. So it was more of just, my heel would come up instead of me actually like taking my foot off the ground. And similarly, like, McFarland talked a lot about me keeping my hands back. When I started with my hands, in a more traditional spot, they would go back and immediately come forward, or they would wrap, around my head in a way that wouldn't really give me that access, that straight path to the ball.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, if I want my hands to stay back, I'm going to start with them back.
So you were starting in like these preset positions, so you could not get into bad places, essentially.
Yeah.
That's
so
awesome.
I figured out where I wanted to be, and I basically started there. And then a lot of the rest was, I still leaked a lot. Like I still would get out in front, but my hands stayed back. And so my hands staying back were able to make up for, me getting fooled or me being out in front.
Yeah.
And then it was mentality. I remember hearing something at some point in my life that stuck with me that, you can only ever really have 3 things on your mind that to like actively address what you're doing. Like you can't be thinking about 10 things productively.
Yeah.
So I would go up and I would have 3 affirmative thoughts on my mind every time I would go up to bat. And it would be hands back. It would be sit back, hands back, and see the ball up.
Wow.
Because I had a tendency of chasing shit in the dirt left and right.
Really?
I mean, yeah. And so I would go up with just these 3 things, and that would be my approach. And then, I would still get fooled, but having the positive, instead of thinking about what I don't want to do, I'm thinking about what I need to do to be successful. So instead of going up there and be like, don't chase the ball on the ground, or don't chase the ball in the dirt.
Those are negative commands.
Exactly. Right. So, I want to see the ball up. I want to keep my hands back. I want to sit back.
Did someone help you cultivate this, or did you come up with this on your own?
I'm sure those 3 ideas came from just, talking with other people, whether it was coaches or teammates. I still don't remember where I heard.
Simple that is. It's so simple. It really obviously was. It worked for you, and this is when you made this meteoric jump.
And that was that was kind of that big change, the ability to make my strengths work for me instead of being handcuffed by my downfalls.
Yeah. And like, you were obviously a strong guy in your sophomore year too, but was there a big jump in strength too, or was this all swing change and kind of mentality?
There definitely, I think right around that, that's when I turned to 21. I think that's when I really kind of came into my
man body.
Yeah. And I don't think I would have noticed it at the time, but looking back, I feel like I became more, confident in my body. I became more confident with the workouts that we were doing. I was I was always putting in the work, but it was still, and you reach that point where it's like, all right, I know what I'm doing and I know what I need to do. I was fortunate enough that we didn't necessarily always have the best strength coaches, as you know, at Murray, but I was fortunate enough to have, people on the team show me. I remember you showed me some form on cleans. I don't know if you remember this. I had never cleaned before. I had never done power cleans, and I was sitting there. I was struggling with like a low weight.
Well, you eventually got awesome with those.
Oh, exactly. And you corrected me in the formula, because it instead of just letting gravity kind of do its thing and focus on my form, I was trying to manhandle the bar up, almost like a reverse curl while jumping.
Right.
And you like talked me through the form and talked me through what I needed to do, and it clicked. And so I think all of these components kind of set me into a place my junior year where, you know, I had confidence in my body. At that point, I had confidence in my swing. And as you mentioned, at this point, you know, we had some guys on our team who could really hit and had some confidence in my lineup. You know, in our lineup, it was kind of this perfect storm.
Exactly. This is the intersection of all these like things you have been doing coming together. And it's like, this is what every ball player hopes, right? They're going to get this season or this jump in production where they take off. And like,
and
you did, dude. This is
one thing that gets lost. So, junior year, I was batting 3-hole. Hill was batting behind me.
Yeah.
And
he set the home run record that year.
He did. He said it was 16. And people, I always give him shit because the next year when they printed the programs, they put my name instead of his as having the 16 home runs. And then that year I broke the record.
He never got to shine then.
And so I joked, I was like, man, that was foreshadowing. They knew that I was going to come for your record. But, you know, having him bat behind me, you know, in that 3-hole, you know, me being in a 3-hole position, they couldn't pitch around me. They couldn't, you know, like it was that junior year was just kind of, like I said, it was just kind of like a perfect storm of positive things that culminated in me kind of finding my stride.
I love that. And you hit a bunch of bombs this year. And the funny thing is there's all kinds of stories about your dad going and chasing home run balls and stuff like this. And, you know, all that kind of good stuff. I've got a clip here. Don, Seventh Heaven, watching Wes.
Oh, I'm telling you what, his mom, Sue, and there weren't many games we missed. I mean, we were in Seventh Heaven following his baseball down at Murray State. I mean, we loved driving down there. And, in hindsight, he said, Coach Mack should have redshirted me the first, you know, my freshman year, because he says I could have had a little more leverage when it came to the draft. Well, you know, hindsight's 2020. And I don't, neither one of us follow that stuff very, very much. You know, in his later years, I can remember I was seeking advice from coaches and people. Well, what do you think we ought to do? And, you know, he had an agent contact us and all that, but you just kind of go through that thing. And it really just kind of happens unless you're a pitcher, as you know, or something like that, field positions and that, you know, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And the fact is that there's not much money in that stuff, but the fact that that he was wanted was really super. So as far as watching, I mean, those were some of the best years of our lives, driving down and watching him play ball. I still relish seeing him. You know, he was a little trimmer now than he is now, but I loved seeing him in a uniform going up to the batter's box and hitting. I can't tell you, Blake, I can't tell you how many home run balls I went and chased.
So this is the funny part that I was talking about that I want to get to. I can't wait to get to. Everyone touched on this, that your dad would be essentially like chasing down all your home run balls. And he'd be like chasing with like 12-year-olds. He'd be like, you know, going to get these balls. And
yeah. And what a lot of people don't realize is when he was beat out to those balls, he'd buy them from the kids.
He'd pay for them.
He'd pay the kids money for these balls. And like, you know, at the time it's like, oh, Dad, come on. Like I'm a college baseball player, but you know, I'm his youngest and he's just, as he mentioned, I mean, as you heard it from his mouth, he was, they were my biggest fans. And,
I'm sure it's so touching for you now, looking back on it.
Oh my God. I mean, and it's not like I said, it's not like I played at Bellarmine, right? In Louisville. Like Murray's a 3.5-hour drive from Louisville. Yeah. The way I drive. So for them, it's closer to 4 hours, you know, and they would come down all throughout the season. There were games that were so cold, my mom would stay in the car. They'd park in a way where she could see the game from the car.
Wow.
And it was a special time for them to be there every step of the way and experience it while I was there.
Yeah.
They may do a few road games as well, but I mean, I don't know how many other parents would have driven 3.5 hours round trip on West Kentucky Parkway every other weekend.
Yeah. And then another funny part that they would always bring Davis. The dog, right? And your dad was laughing. He said that everyone kind of ended up knowing Davis at the games and stuff. And go over to like the snack stand and be standing there waiting for hot dogs and stuff like that, and just became kind of part of the culture there.
Oh yeah, I mean, my mom has a picture of people literally lined, like he was there waiting for a hot dog to hit the ground, and people lined up behind him. So it looks like he's standing in line, like waiting to make his order. Uh, he made it. Yeah, they always stayed at the Best Western in Murray because they were pet friendly, and
Yeah.
my dad built a special stand when I was moving to and from Murray each year. He built like a special stand so Davis could ride in the front of like a box truck moving my stuff. I mean, that dog, he's no longer with us these days, but he was a real one.
I love that. Next up, I've got a couple Brian Probst quotes here. Got to chat with him. He had some funny stuff. Let's see. He kind of mentioned a story about you guys' first interaction when you got there, about there was some confusion over a chair, like it was your chair or it was his chair in the locker room, and we don't have to go into it, but he said how it started and how it ended were much different. He goes, I love him to death, a great teammate, great friend. He's a big old teddy bear after getting to know him. You know what I'm talking about?
I have a vague recollection of me being like trying to assert some like seniority dominance in the locker room. And I remember I did it again senior year to a freshman recruit that I'm sure a couple people could talk on. But
he said, not your stereotypical baseball player, could absolutely light it up at the plate, had a great approach, spread out, and flat bat path. Turned to double play extremely well as a first baseman. He did an absolutely outstanding job with that. Was amazed by how good he got at that. As good as he was his senior year, he could have even been better. D Hill went down, had some back issues, and he lost some protection. One of the hardest working guys on the team, no nonsense on the field, a goofball at times off the field or at the right times. An amazing student. He talked about, this was cool. He called it the 6 classes story. And he said he was like talking to you about, or he was saying something like, Wes, how do you take so many classes? Or why do you sign up for so many classes? And you said, it's easy. I'm going to sign up for 6 classes, and I know I'm not going to like one, so I'm going to drop it. And that was kind of your mentality at times. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely wanted to finish in the 4 years, and
right.
I wanted to have a full plate.
Yeah.
And so I would sign up for the max. That way I wasn't locked in. If I signed up just enough to be a full-time student, I'm kind of locked into those.
Yeah.
But especially in history, man, a lot of being able to really engage with the people your audience, you've got to know what the hell you're doing. And some of these history professors are just as boring as people, imagine. It's bad.
Last one, really good teammate. Glad he succeeded. Fun to watch him take off there. I've also got a couple Noonie quotes here. Want to get through a couple Noonies?
Yeah.
Knew who he was from high school. So you guys played together or played against each other in high school?
Yeah, our teams were the rival high schools.
Yeah, and he said, that's what he said. He said arch rival in high school. We knew him as the left-handed gorilla. He said, don't put it over the plate or he's going to take it deep. Always a big, strong, like intimidating guy. Here we go. Was always super intimidating in high school. Was a little unsure of him when I came to Murray, but then you come to realize, he's this amazing, warm, kind soul person. Wasn't a better hitter in college out there his senior year. Could take any pitch deep, any location. It did not matter. He laughed about your famous line when people would be like, Wes, did you watch the game last night? And you would go, I love sports balls. That was kind of your thing. Like, this guy doesn't really follow sports outside of playing it. That was kind of his thing. You don't meet a lot of people like Wes, people that are truly authentic to themselves and genuine. Wes is exactly what he gives you. He doesn't hide who he is. I, again, second that. Amazing. That's an amazing thing. I've always thought that about you as well. I'm loaded here for your junior year. I've also got some Tyler Owen stuff to go through, some Elliot Frey, and some decal stuff. Any more thoughts? So as this junior year, we'll get to those in a sec. As your junior year is unfolding here, are you thinking like, are you feeling this must be somewhat of an unconscious experience for you, like this huge jump, and now there's got to be scouts starting to come around at least or sniff around, and you got to be thinking, I have to go to a prospect league in the summer. This has got to be a big shift for you this year, right?
That really happened towards the middle to end of junior season. Because I had heard of summer ball. I heard of guys going to cool places, and I thought it was nothing more than just like, oh, you're going to go play somewhere cool over the summer. It's a fun experience.
Yeah.
And then through junior year, I start talking to teammates, and it's like, no, this is a must.
Yeah.
To keep progressing, you need like you can't take time off. It's a chance for more people to see you.
Yeah.
So that's when I started looking into where we could play. 4 of us actually were able to go to the Jayhawk League. It was me, KT, Craycraft, and Fry.
El Dorado Broncos.
El Dorado. They will correct you quickly, and it is El Dorado is in the middle of nowhere, Kansas, not far from Wichita. But yeah, I didn't really know much about what summer ball entailed because, like I said, my other 2 experiences were very laid back and informal, and so this year I was fortunate enough to go with some of my close friends. But yeah, about halfway through that junior year is when it kind of started to hit me. It's like, oh, like this could turn into something. I need to kind of let this grow. I need to kind of cultivate.
Yeah.
I can't just sit back anymore because this could be not that I was sitting back at any point, but like this could be something.
Absolutely.
And junior year is when I made the switch to first base. So I started, even though I was not a defensive all-star by any means.
Right.
Did
it feel more comfortable for you there?
Well, it felt like I was contributing more.
Yeah.
To the team, because as a DH, as much as I love hitting, as much as I loved, being able to just focus on good at bats, when you have a shitty game as a DH, it sucks that there's no other way for you to contribute to the success of the team.
Yeah.
If you have a shitty day as a DH, as a first base, if you have a shitty day at the plate as a first baseman, and you come out and you make a couple plays, you dig a ball out of the, you pick a ball and you kind of save a bad throw, you save an inning, you feel like you're part of the team contributing to that win.
Yeah.
So that was big. And I still didn't have anybody teaching me how to play infield. The closest thing to advice I got was Coach Mack was like, you used to be a catcher. If it looks like it's hard to field, just block
Dig it out.
Yeah. I was like, all right. So I'm just going to take a line drive to the chest. Probst mentioned, I was actually surprisingly good at turning double plays. I think that was purely from my time catching, kind of the quick release, throwing somebody out at second. But it felt natural. It felt like I was contributing. It felt, I was pretty good at picking the balls. I was, I could hold my own with the basics. I wasn't going to wow you with plays that were, extraordinary, but I was going to make the plays that should be made.
And you probably had a really strong arm for first baseman, and you had to have been probably the fastest first baseman in all of Division I baseball, honestly.
I did, and I think that kind of helped me out early on each season before the scouting report made it around. People would be like, oh, first baseman with big numbers, he's not going to be able to run as well.
Right. And this guy flies.
I'd be able to sneak in some bags here and there and, leg out a couple triples.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get to the El Dorado stuff because I'm excited about that. But let me get through some of these quotes and clips, and we'll just kind of riff off there if you're cool with that. All right. It's T.O. time, buddy. He opened it up with Westicles as well. So that nickname lives on. To see what he did in 3 years is hard to wrap your head around. These were truly video game numbers. First impression of Wes, pretty big dude. Could tell he'd been in a weight room, shaved head, tattoos everywhere. Just an interesting guy, not your typical Coach Mack recruit. Like, who the heck is this dude? I gotta talk to him and see what he's all about. I think a lot of us thought that, kind of like, who is this? What's going on with this guy? His appearance is just scratching the surface of what Wes is. Laughed about Wes hating jeans. We talked about the suit tuxedo stuff. Let's see. We already played the Buck clip. We already played senior year clip. His freshman year was some sort of an enigma. Like, it had never really happened. It was just such a magical moment. I barely remember him even taking BP. Seemed like he did all he did his freshman year was catch bullpens. we didn't really even know what he was freshman year or what he was going to be. This is a funny story. So your senior year versus mid-con, do you remember this?
Oh yeah.
So this was interesting. So T.O. would have graduated when you were a junior.
Correct.
And then he moved instantly into coaching at Mid-Continent University, which I believe is in Mayfield, Kentucky, and it was an NAIA. They're no longer a school as far as I know, right?
Correct.
And Tyler Pittman, who a Murray State great as well, was the pitching coach there. So anyway, they had a situation where you came up with the bases loaded, and this clip is called Wes Barry Bonds.
Funny story about that. So my first year at Mid-Continent, we weren't that great. Like we kind of had a ragtag group, but we played hard and we had some good kids. But we were not super talented. But we go to Murray, and of course I know all these guys that are still playing there because they were my teammates. And
Sure.
Pittman was on the staff at Mid-Continent. He was the pitching coach,
Right.
and that was the main thing that we said going into that game against Murray. We were like, hey, we are not going to let Cunningham beat us. Like, I don't care if we walk this dude 5 times. We're not going to let him beat us. So, sure as shit, later in the game, bases loaded, Wes comes up to bat. Pittman goes for a mound meeting, talks to our pitcher. He comes back to the dugout. And I go, what'd you tell him? He goes, I told him we're going to walk him on 4 pitches. I go, we're giving this dude the Barry Bonds treatment? And Pittman goes, you're damn right we are. So this is how bad it was. Our pitcher couldn't throw a ball. So of course, I think he throws like the first 2, out of the zone. He throws one, probably not a strike, but of course Wes doesn't want to walk. Wes gets out on that front foot, hits one into the parking lot and right, and me and Pittman just look at each other like, you got to be kidding me.
Isn't that great?
Oh man, I remember that game because I was friends with T.O. and Pittman, and that was I think that series was one of the first times I had ever seen Coach Matt give me the green light on 3-0.
Really?
Yeah, and I hit a home run, and I remember like I could overhear Pittman calling his team out, like, I told you all not to give him anything to hit. But T.O. was right, man. I didn't want to walk. I didn't want, if you made it close, if I could get my barrel on it, I was going to try to find a way.
Yeah, love that. Next clip is called T.O. Barrel to Ball Skills.
But one thing that I was always super impressed with Wes was just his ability, just the hand-eye coordination and just his ability to put the bat on the ball. Like, because, Wes did not have a pretty swing, and he would be the first to tell you that. Like, because, I'm a coach. Like, I love the offensive side of hitting, and I love the mechanical side, the mental approach, all that. And Wes will be the first person to tell you that mechanically, it's like he did everything wrong. Like, there was not one fundamentally sound thing about his swing.
But he could just do it.
Just his ability to put the barrel on the ball. I mean, it was just next level. And I remember being super impressed with that. Like even his sophomore year, like even though the power numbers weren't there, you could see like, man, this guy has the ability to get some hits. Like he has ability to put the ball in play.
Totally agree. You had an innate ability to get that barrel on the ball. You just could do it.
Man, it's funny because I'm glad to hear that that people kind of like what we've been talking about this whole time. Like, I've never been shy about, I've never tried to portray myself as like, I had such a beautiful swing. I was such a great defense. It's like, I like T.O. said, and like, McFarland said, like all these guys, like I'll be the first to tell you, like it on paper or, if you took a video of me, in these games, it'd be like, no, something's not mathing right. Like this doesn't make sense. But But like, like I was saying, it was all about like kind of figuring out like, all right, I can't change my swing to be fundamentally perfect. I'm not that's not how I succeed. That's not
But
how
you can
I'm
have a
gonna make
perfect
it
swing for
work.
you though. Your perfect West
Exactly.
swing.
It's like, all right,
Your
so
authentic West swing.
instead of changing my swing to meet the fundamentals, I'm just gonna, change my approach and make my weird swing work.
Yeah. Were you looking fastball, or what was or did you ever guess pitches, or
I
what were
was
your thoughts there?
I was always sitting 90% of the time I was sitting fastball.
Yeah.
I think one thing that Murray was a mid-level D1.
Right.
We weren't the SECs out there, but uh, I think one of the fundamental approaches that a lot of people had is when they'd see somebody with numbers, they'd see somebody, coming up who's the best hitter on the team.
Right.
They're pitching him away. They're pitching him away. Well, that was where that's where I was looking. That's where I was
Yeah.
succeeding. I liked
Right.
that pitch on the outer half of the plate. Um, I early on, change-ups were my kryptonite. And then the more that I kind of uh, made my swing work, that's when me being able to keep my hands back allowed me to make up for me being fooled on changeups.
Yeah.
I was never great at hitting breaking pitches. That was something that I struggled with all the way throughout my career. But back, most of the people I approached, their approaches to a power hitting lefty was, you know, let's paint the outside corner. Let's hit him with some
Yeah.
changeup, some off speed, stuff that's gonna get him out in his front foot. And
Yeah.
that was stuff I was able to make work.
Yeah. That's funny. All right. Continuing on with some TO quotes. Dude was seriously fast. He could really run. He beat out a ton of infield hits. When Wes got in the weight room, he wasn't there to mess around. He put up some impressive and heavy weight. He got really big and strong his senior year. I've always wondered about his forearm strength. This is interesting. And if there was a correlation from drumming, just constantly having that grip and beating on it and whatnot. And no one else brought up that. I thought that was an interesting thought. I don't know. Is there anything to that?
I've never thought about that, but it wouldn't surprise me in the least.
Yeah, and like dexterity and strength and
I put a lot of emphasis on forearm strength because my swing relied so heavily on keeping my hands back and my wrists, my bat speed being able to make up for the fact that my body was fooled or that I was out in front or that so it's funny. I literally was just having this conversation with my wife the other day. I got some new, like grip strength and some forearm things to have at the house while we're watching movies and stuff. And she was like, what's really the point of working out your forearms? And I was like, I don't really understand a point now, but I used to pride myself on them because it was a big part of, what I view as my success as a hitter. And then I was like, plus I just think good forearms just look good.
100%.
Dude.
Someone walks in the room with some forearms that mean business.
Yeah, man. Dude. But I've never put two and two together, that drumming. Because
interesting thought, right?
That makes sense.
Yeah. You could tell Wes loved the weight room. Wes had so many interests outside of baseball. Dude was an absolutely brilliant student. You and I basically took classes. You're talking to me. Easy classes and majored in baseball. I'm not celebrating that. That's just how it was. Looking back, I wish I could have done it different. Wes was like double majoring in history and archaeology and taking full course loads. He didn't have all the extra baseball stuff in his head that made him overthink it. Cool. He had simple thoughts like put the bat on the ball. Your three things. Oppositely, I would research mechanics and watch video and probably had too much in my head. And Wes just had, one thing, bat on the ball, essentially. Some of the most successful hitters I've ever known have kept it simple like that. And I love that you're such an analytical thinker guy outside of baseball, but you could just shut it down when you got in that batter's box. And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And I wish that I could have a course of action to be able to have that approach. But I don't know. I'm assuming just kind of stemmed out of, loving the sport and loving playing the game, but never being, fully engrossed in watching the game or fandom or things like that. KT and I, when we lived together junior and senior year, he used to joke. He was like, "Man, you're gonna be the guy that makes it, and you're gonna be facing some like all-star pitcher and not think twice because you don't know who the hell he is."
Exactly.
You know?
Like, I don't even know who this guy is.
And like I've never watched more baseball than I did when I lived with KT, because he had, every St. Louis Cardinals game was on at our house.
Yeah,
but
right.
Yeah, I wish I knew how to, cultivate that mentality, but it just, I guess, came naturally because I never knew how to analyze baseball.
Yeah.
I never knew how to overthink baseball, so I never did.
That's a good thing. Wow.
On the flip side, like T.O. said, like he would, he was so knowledgeable about the game and lived for the game so much. One year, he even made his walkout song, Three Little Birds, Don't Worry, Be Happy, because he was like, I need something just to like get me in a positive mental state when I go to step in the batter's box, because otherwise there's a million things going in my head.
Yeah. T.O. and I privately have discussed kind of looking back on our career sometimes. And I think both of us, myself included, struggle with some things like that, believing in yourself at times and confidence and overthinking and having so much information that you're paralyzed, paralysis by analysis in some ways. And probably KT falls under some of that too. Like he knew so much about baseball that there was so much information in his head. Right.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and he was such a prospect, and like, he wouldn't, I don't think, have said it outright, but I think he would say it now that, like, in his head, he was trying to live up to, to a certain standard. He always knew he was going to, reach a certain level.
Yeah.
And when I think when you have that expectation with the over analytical baseball mind, you can sometimes get in your own head.
100%. And before we move on from these guys, I want to say both KT and T.O., for whatever reason, I know both of these guys had pro aspirations. And I think baseball is such a crazy game of timing and being in the right place at the right time, and all these factors, right? I definitely think T.O. and KT both had pro level tools and could have played pro ball under different, if just the stars had lined up a little differently. So I've always wanted to say that. I thought they were absolutely phenomenal baseball players,
And I couldn't agree more. I mean, I was fortunate enough to play with Kyle for 4 collegiate years plus a summer league, and T.O. for 3 years. And, I'd take them over some guys I played with professionally any day of the week.
Right.
And
100%.
Other guys maybe got a look because they played somewhere else, or they looked better on some film, or, what I'm saying? It's such a fickle sport.
It is crazy. 2 more T.O. quotes here. How are we doing on time? You getting close?
Yeah, if we get to a natural point here soon.
We do. So let's finish. We've got Frey and then Decal, and then we'll just roll out of that.
Perfect.
Cool. All right, we'll finish our T.O. quotes. Wes is a different breed of human. The last thing I'm thinking about doing while I'm drinking is lifting. I can't wait to get to this. I keep saying this. I really don't know how he did it. One of the cool things about the Breads from our era was how close we were. Multiple people said this. To this day, it's special. Even outsiders notice it. How just tight knit and how much these guys loved each other. Like kind of the core group of those Dirty Breads, and special group of guys for sure.
Oh yeah, I could not agree more.
T.O. is great. Now here we go. Elliot, and he was amazing, man. Like I had a great time talking with him. I hadn't spoken with him probably since I left Murray. So, you guys were teammates he would come a year after you, so 3 years.
3 years, and he was also one of the ones who went to Kansas with me.
Right, here we go. So, when I was an incoming freshman, same dorm, one of the first guys that I met when I got to Murray. First thing that stands out about Wes is his size, his huge build. He carries himself with confidence, a swagger, very outgoing, personable, fun to be around guy. The longer I knew him, it was fun to see how that confidence, that swagger translated onto the field. Here we got a cool one here. Fry, the strides Wes made.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, had never seen strides from any sort of player
in my entire time playing. A lot of times you kind of play with a guy for a little bit, you really kind of get to know what he's got, and that's
right.
what's expected. Whereas Wes was, each year he returned to Murray State, he was an absolute different player, and he got better and better every year. And I feel like, looking back, that Wes, he was always gifted with speed, and he was a lefty, right? So I feel like, I don't know what impression coaches maybe made before his time at Murray State, but it was always, hey, I have speed, and I'm going to hit as soon as I make contact. I'm worried about running to first base. And I feel like, as you mentioned, that quiet 380, that was that mindset. And then, coaching staff and being around other players at the collegiate level, and Wes, coming into himself and understanding his ability to drive the baseball and hit for power. Seeing that unfold that following year was pretty incredible. And then to have a third year to go from infield hits, bloop singles using speed, to learning how to drive the gap, hit for some power, and then that his final year, his senior year, to rewrite the record books and home runs and slugging percentage and extra base hits. It was an absolutely incredible thing to witness. And I mean, just kind of his overall being in that he wasn't for a Division I baseball player, he didn't live baseball, right? He was able to compartmentalize the sport, compartmentalize that aspect of his life, and where a lot of guys can get, hey, I'm a Division I baseball player. This is what brought me here. This is what I want to do for my career. That drive that some guys have and can kind of get wrapped around the axle, where Wes 100%. Was able to compartmentalize and think that provided a kind of a balance in his life, where he didn't get overly consumed. He had a life outside of baseball, hobbies. He was a drummer in a band and had passions outside of the sport, and I think that balance can really be healthy for players at that level where the pressure is high. And I think that helped Wes, really do.
That's a cool one. Then our final Frey clip here. Diligent worker. Here we go.
100%. Yeah. Extremely diligent. Unmatched in the weight room, not only just his physical stature and throwing weight around, but his drive, his ability to be dedicated and carry himself with just a level of positivity that not a lot of had, right? A lot of guys, view that time as, put in a hard practice and then you got to go put another hour in the weight room. Whereas Wes, always carried himself with grace, positivity. And it was just, he just kind of exuded this light that guys gravitated toward. So I felt that drive that drove his work ethic. He had the natural ability, but also the mindset that he put toward everything he did.
Pretty touching.
That is, man. And him talking about the kind of compartmentalizing and being able to not distract but remove myself from sometimes the pressures of baseball with other hobbies. That was something that made the move to professional ball, it made it a little harder, because you get to professional, it's all baseball. You can't bring hobbies with you. You're not living anywhere permanently. You have to be able to pack your bags up and move at the drop of a hat. And so there were times that I found myself, it was very foreign to me, but I found myself dwelling on, an error here or a bad game here because I had nothing, it was, all right, I'm just going to go sit in a hotel room, or I'm going to sit in my crappy apartment.
Right. You didn't have some project at school to work on, or you didn't have, you weren't going out and drumming. You can't take your drums with you in the minors,
Exactly. And
it's interesting.
And I'd never really thought about that until just hearing him bring that up, that, I didn't think about it as, because I definitely never approached anything I was doing outside of baseball as like a distraction by any means. It was just another extension of who I was and who I am. But they kind of operated in some ways as a way for me to, put my focus elsewhere and come back to this when I'm ready to.
Yeah.
With not to say that was ever, a large, like, hurdle I couldn't get over, but I specifically remember times where it was, I would be down for longer than I was used to, and it was very foreign, and it was very kind of disconcerting at times.
Yeah, baseball's a brutal sport, man.
Dude, she's a cruel mistress.
She is, man, but I still love her. Can't get enough.
Dude, you and me, I'm not gonna to jump ahead of anything here, but I was reading over some of the questions and stuff, and one thing that you wrote, or that you had on there, was dreaming about baseball. And I'm not going to go into it too much, but for somebody who's kind of one of the reoccurring themes today is, I didn't really watch baseball, didn't really think about it too much. It crosses my mind more subconsciously than it ever did before, and than I ever would have thought it does.
Isn't it trippy? Yeah,
it is, and we'll jump into that more when the time, because I
love that foreshadowing. That's cool.
Yeah, I've got some thoughts. Okay. I didn't even think about it until you wrote it down.
Well, perfect. Yeah, that was going to be my last question on our Q&A. So I always finish with a kind of funny, some serious, some not serious questions at the end. This is perfect. We're going to let Decal take us out here.
Perfect.
So, love this guy. He ended up, had a nice career in the Cardinals minor league system. Just a funny guy. One of the funniest teammates I've ever had.
One of the best, man. You could be having a shitty day, and you come out, and he'll put you right.
He's Mr. Sunshine, right? All right, Decal, the big stupid idiot. All right, here we go. When I called him, he goes, "Man, I'm slinging cardboard, hopes and dreams." And, all right, here we go. First impression of Wes, a different breed, similar to me in some aspects, totally opposite in others, and I kind of agree. Most of the time, calm, cool, and collected, laid back, but didn't hold anything back when he was frustrated. I think he had a really good balance there. Great at not pressing in baseball. He cared, but he wouldn't let it get to him, and he would let it go and be laid back again. This is funny. Wes at Murray State grew a lot in tattoos, size, strength, and speed. Made quick work in the weight room, really took to it. First didn't strike me that he was going to become what he was going to become. Crazy what he turned into. We had a good laugh about your dress pants. That's, the reoccurring. Everyone loves the dress pants. Could have been higher rounds or gotten more money had he been a junior when he got drafted. The red shirt, that's the whole senior sign stuff. We kind of touched on that. I think we put that to bed mostly. Crazy to think that what he could have done with another year of eligibility stat-wise. That is interesting to think of. Like, you rewrote the record books in 3 years, essentially. Had a ton of hustle hits as a sophomore. Didn't have much of a home defensively while I was there. I think you got to that, first base after he left, essentially. He could hit a 4-chopper to second and beat it out. Nub it off the bat and beat it out. Hit it out of the park as well. Crazy how well-rounded he got quickly. Blows my mind how much he jumped year to year progression-wise. Wes saved me multiple times in my season when I got drafted. He'd hit a key home run. He'd come in and say something like, "Hey, can't let you lose this game, buddy." Grew so much as a team leader, a vocal guy, but not a vocal guy at the same time. He was there when you needed him. Seemed like Wes never had a bad game or a bad day. Never missed a beat as a player or a teammate. Everything he hit had a chance to do something, from a chopper to a bomb. He was exciting to watch. His weight room stuff was a lot deeper than many people would see or understand. I used to admire him for my naps on the leg press machine.
That's perfect.
Wes and KT were animals, always getting extra work, a great combo, great team. I like to think his weight room stuff did a ton for his career, his power, his speed. He was well built, but not overly built. He had a good amount of muscle, but you can get too muscle bound in baseball. It made him quicker, not slower. Nothing ever slowed Wes down. Love Wes on and off the field. He deserves everything he got. He pushed the right amount off the field. We had a lot of good stories that we can't share on here. And then, so this is the perfect ending spot for us, don't you think? You got to get out of here.
I agree. I think this is a good spot.
This is a perfect spot. I've got a decal. This is perfect. This is a little clip. I've got a name for it, but I'm not going to say it because he kind of reveals the name at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and play this, and then we're going to get on out of here. We'll pick it up here again soon, buddy. All right?
Perfect. Sounds good, man.
Here we go.
His character for sure, man. He's one of those guys. Everybody loved him. He'd put you in your place in a heartbeat, like if he felt like you were doing something wrong. But I mean, just his character alone, like I said before, he was really good at saying a lot without saying a lot. You know, he was a good team leader that just got, you know, kind of got you fired up just quietly. And then he was also a guy, you know, his downtime, he's going to get some more tattoos. He's going for a drive, you know. He's almost like a meathead, but he's also like a poet too. Like I don't know if that's the right way to say, but it kind of is, man. Like he's a really smart guy as well. Yeah. So like just well-rounded all around, not even just through baseball, but like I don't know. It's hard to put. You can't put one tag on Wes. He wasn't a meathead. You know, he wasn't
Meathead Poet covers it. I think that's really good. Seriously. Yeah. Meathead Poet. That might be the name of this episode. I'm not sure. But all right, Wes, I'm gonna let you get out of here, brother, and we'll pick it up soon. All right,
man.
All love, man. This was so much dang fun. I can't wait to pick it up
again.
Yes, sir.
I can't wait, man. I'll talk to you later.
Post game spread. We're out of here.